everybody, and welcome back to the show of the Common Man. Today, we will get to speak to the amazing hero himself. Let's hear it for Andrew Jackson.
Wow, don't go in there for a while.
Welcome to the show, Mr. Jackson. We're very pleased to have you.
It's an honor to be here.
Well, I think you know what I'm about to ask you. Everyone has been dying to hear your answer. How do you feel about the nullification crisis?
I feel like the nullification crisis caused many problems and constitutional issues. This was because some people interpreted the Constitution differently than others. Both sides, the Union and the Confederacy, twisted the Constitution to make it sound not okay and okay for South Carolina to secede. Some people thought that South Carolina's decision was unconstitutional and some did not.
Boy, that seems like it would be very hard to deal with as a president, having to listen to both sides and choose one. How did you go about this predicament?
Well, the first thing I did was I showed my thoughts. I wanted the nation to know that this crisis would tear us apart. I wanted to make sure the nation stayed together as it should be. I, of course, could not do this alone. With the help of Henry Clay, we could make America one whole again. Henry Clay made a bill to lower tariffs for the South. Henry Clay also was a big help in the resolving of the nullification crisis and protective tariffs.
Wow, that seems like a huge problem for you to deal with. So what was the big deal about the nullification crisis anyway? Why were these tariffs so much of a problem for the South, but not at all for the North?
Well, as you know, the North and South have very different geographical conditions. It is easier for the South to grow crops because of the climate and weather, but not so much for the North. And so instead of sticking to farming, they industrialized. So now the South is all about farming and the North is all about making factories and machinery. The problem with this was that they had two totally different economies. This difference in economies is what punished the South so much during the nullification crisis. The North wanted money, so they raised the price on imported goods. This forced the South to have to buy the northern materials and goods because the foreign goods were very highly priced after the effects of the tariff. Sometimes the North would even raise the tariffs on foreign goods so high that they could raise their factory-made goods prices higher also, but not higher than the foreign goods, thus making foreign good prices extremely high and northern goods the only other less pricey option. This infuriated the South because of how much it benefited the North economy and punished Southerners by making them buy the North expensive goods.
That doesn't seem very fair to me. Seems like the North was really in the wrong in this situation. Was there anyone that stood up for the South?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, Henry Clay helped the South a lot during the nullification crisis. He wanted to change the North ways of bullying the South. To do this, he created the Compromise Tariff of 1833. This bill lowered the tariff prices a little, but it was still too much for the Southerners.
Okay, so then the South was wrong, I guess.
Nope. In fact, Henry Clay wasn't the only one putting up a fight. The state of South Carolina passed the South Carolina Ordinance of Nullification, which stated that tariffs were unconstitutional. This was one of the arguments regarding protective tariffs.
Oh, so what were the other sides to these arguments made by the South?
Well, there are obviously only two different sides, and that is people for tariffs and people against tariffs. The side for tariffs are people from the North because the tariffs benefit them. The side against tariffs are people from the South because they're punished by the tariffs. The North argues that tariffs are good because they can help the economy by making sure that American-made goods are being purchased rather than foreign goods. The South argues that the tariffs make prices way too high. People are having to buy more expensive things like food rather than other resources.
Oh, it's kind of like taxation. So what were the arguments on taxation?
Well, there has been a lot of taxation throughout history, but right now I will talk about Great Britain taxing the colonies. Great Britain started taxing the colonies with the Townshend Acts and Tea Acts in the late 1700s. Britain started taxing the colonies with the Townshend Acts so that they could raise money to give people working in the British government higher salaries so they would stay loyal to Great Britain. As anyone would have expected, the colonies did not agree with any of the taxes imposed by Great Britain and felt they shouldn't have to pay them. They revolted in every way they could, including the Boston Tea Party. This was a way of the colonies boycotting tea. They threw loads of tea off ships into the Boston harbor. Even though Britain reacted to this by punishing them, they got their point across of how they felt about being taxed.
Well, that is very understandable, considering their no taxation without representation slogan. President Jackson, I have another question. What happened in the U.S. election of 1876? Why was this election so chaotic?
Well, this election was one of the most debatable elections ever held in the United States. The election was between Republican Rutherford B. Hayes and Democrat Samuel J. Tilden. Both of these men supported civil service reform. This was one of the most disputable elections, but it was solved by the Compromise of 1877. This compromise ended the election of 1876 and also ended the Reconstruction era.
The Reconstruction era? Is that another name for your famous Age of Jackson?
Well, actually, the Reconstruction era was a period in time where the South had to reform or reconstruct themselves. The Age of Jackson, also known as the Jacksonian Democracy, was the before, during, and after results of my presidency. During my elections, I used the spoils system. The spoils system is the act of a political party winning an election and giving all their supporters jobs in the government. In addition, I served in the Revolutionary War and a major battle of the War of 1812. Many people also know me from forcing out various Indian tribes. The most noticeable tribe was the Cherokees. Federal troops were sent to Georgia and forced 20,000 Cherokees out of their territory at gunpoint. This journey, taken by the Cherokees, was then nicknamed the Trail of Tears. John Quincy Adams and I were constantly going at it. In the election of 1824, we ran against each other. However, neither of us received enough electoral votes to become president. The vote was then sent to the House of Representatives. Henry Clay, who was in the House of Representatives, strongly disliked me. He put all the power he could into getting John Quincy Adams to win the vote. Adams won and made Henry Clay Secretary of State. After his irrelevant term, I was then elected president in 1828. John C. Calhoun was then selected as my vice president. During my presidency, the nullification crisis was put on over the tariff of 1828. This tariff taxed all foreign goods. John C. Calhoun disagreed with this and secretly wrote a pamphlet giving advice to South Carolina. They decided to follow his advice, and I was very upset and felt betrayed.
Wow, all this stuff you're telling me. I never knew about it. This session was very interesting, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you for coming out. Let's hear it for President Jackson!
Thank you, thank you.
Peace out, homie.
Alright, cool. Oh yeah, by the way, I really love your choice of clothing today.
Thank you. Well, that's all the time we have. I'll see you next week for another episode of The Show of the Common Man.